Ladies and gents, welcome back to the Pole Position YouTube channel, and it's time for driver ratings for the Chinese Grand Prix. Round 2 of the Formula 1 calendar. We got a absolutely banging race on Sunday. Ferrari's going side by side. Kimi Antonelli getting his debut victory. Alpine and Haas right up there in the points. Williams getting their debut points as well. So I'm going to go through all 22 drivers, give you a rating out of 5 for all of them. 6 for me being the average. Below 6 is below par. Above 6 is obviously a very good effort. And look, we had a lot of good drivers this weekend. A lot of drivers that overachieved. So a lot of high ratings to be done this week. For this weekend's recent driving action. With that being said, let's jump straight into it. We're starting at the bottom and we'll work our way to the top. Well, the bottom two, I'm going to give NAs to. Alex Albon and Gabriel Bortoleto, NA, both didn't start, both didn't even get out to the grid. Hydraulic problem for Alex Albon. He qualified at P18, Gabriel Bortoleto in P16. Actually unsure of what was going on there. Electrical problems for the Audi car. That's a bit of a problem for Audi. We have to talk about that at a later point in time. But now 2 races, only 1 car starting for Audi. But both given NAs just because of there wasn't much they could do about it. Hadn't seen much of them over the weekend. So as such, NA for both Alex Albon and Gabriel Bortoleto, who both didn't start on Sunday. Following this, another did not start for Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. I'll group them together and just give them 6 out of 10 because Piastri qualified P5, Norris P6. They did what they had to do. It really is an average mark for those two. They're maximising the package they've been given. The McLaren car seems to be quite underwhelming, not only in terms of the straight line speed, but also in the corners as well. It really is the 3rd best car and 3rd best by a long way. So I've gone to give them both 6 out of 10. I think it would be interesting to see how they went on race pace over the Grand Prix distance. They did all right in the sprint race, obviously getting Lando Norris in P4, Oscar Piastri in P6, but it really seems to have decent one-lap pace, or at least competitive one-lap pace, but nowhere near it over a race distance. Really disappointed that both didn't start, but 6 out of 10s for both of them for me. Up next is Lance Stroll, the first of the did not finishes. That was lap 11 that happened. He qualified P21. I've given him 5 out of 10 just because he got out-qualified by one of the Cadillacs in Valtteri Bottas. That's very underwhelming for him. 5 out of 10 again. Not much he could have done. Really poor weekend overall for Aston Martin once again, but being out-qualified by Cadillac is an all-time low. Saying that the Cadillac actually looks quicker than Aston Martin over different periods of the race, and over the distance, they got the race distance done where the Aston Martins couldn't. So I think Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso are driving an absolute tractor, a vibrating tractor at that. So as such, 5 out of 10 for Lance Stroll for me. Fernando Alonso up next. He also did not finish. It was a retirement around lap 30 for Fernando. Qualified P19. Again, I've just given him a 6 out of 10. Did what he had to do, got the better of his team, they got the better of the 2 Cadillacs, but had to retire, was forced to retire. You see him shaking his hands off the steering wheel when he was driving. That car is horrid to drive, and that team looks horrid in general. There's not much happening at Aston Martin. Can't wait to see what happens coming up in Suzuka, where Honda's home track. What are they going to do there? How are they going to make a positive spin on what has been an awful off-season, an awful start to the season? Look, Fernando did the best he could. Got up to P9 actually in the first lap yet again, but no ironic ratings this week. I've just gone and given him the 6 out of 10. Did the best he could, but that car absolutely sucks. Next up is Max Verstappen, who also was forced to retire later in the race. Qualified P8, was doing fantastic work in that Red Bull. Struggled off the line, struggled in the sprint race. Struggled off the line of the sprint race as well. Struggled at every session, but when it mattered most in the Grand Prix proper, was absolutely wringing the neck of that Red Bull car. And despite being done over by the safety car, the poor timing there, pitting before that, but again, that poor start, he went back towards the back of the grid twice in that race. Fought his way back up into P6 in both occasions. And then right at the end, his car gave way. Electrical problems there, not able to recharge the battery. So he had to retire later that race. I've given him an 8 out of 10. Look, he did everything he possibly could. That car is a handful. It's not quick. It's not good in the corners. It is a very un-Red Bull car, and the fact that we know Red Bull's never really been a fast car. The Ford powertrains, the Red Bull powertrains, not seen reliable either. It's the 2nd week in a row now that has to be a retirement for the Red Bull team. But he was doing the most he possibly could with that car, and he fought through the pack as best he could as well. Could never really close Ollie Behrman, but boy, he was doing everything he possibly could to get that car up the grid and show that he had some fight in him. And unfortunately, the car gave way. Just a symbol of the Red Bull season and the Verstappen season. So I've given him an 8 out of 10. I think a really, really solid weekend for Max Verstappen. Everything was out of his hands. He did the best he could with what was given to him. So as such, a really, really solid weekend for Max Verstappen for me. Our first finisher was Sergio Perez in P15. Obviously qualified P22. Just giving him a 6 out of 10. A stock mark. Was outperformed by his teammate all weekend. She made contact with Valtteri Bottas, I believe, as well in the early portions as well of that race. He's looked a little bit off at Sergio Perez. I think around Australia, Valtteri obviously had the problems with the car to retire, but it seems to be that Valtteri Bottas looks the quicker driver in this current car. Look, he got to the end of the race distance. That's a positive. That's why he's got an average mark for me at a 6 out of 10. But it's a long way for Perez to go to catch up to Valtteri Bottas right now, who seems to just have the upper edge over his teammate. So for Sergio Perez, P15 finish, a 6 out of 10 for me. Esteban Ocon was in P14, qualified P13. I've given him a 2 out of 10. Another weekend where he's absolutely outdone by his teammate Ollie Behrman, and we know Ollie Behrman is a generational talent. He can't really hold that too much against him. But in the sprint as well, where was he? P10, so missing out once again. Ollie Behrman getting a point there. Made the mistake of diving down the inside of Colapinto on cold tyres. Hits Colapinto, was up the grid in P3 when he was offset with the safety car. He just never seemed to settle after the early portions of that race and after getting his first pit stop. Frustrating weekend for Esteban Ocon. Needs to bounce back in Suzuka and Japan. But that car looks raceable. That car looks racy. It seems to be is destined for points. Alpine get the double points this week. I think Esteban Ocon needs to make his way up into the points because Haas should be getting double points on every odd weekend. Maybe they have some weekends they don't when Alpine do, and when Alpine don't, they should. I think really Haas should be pushing for double points most weekends going forward, especially with the reliability of the McLarens and the Red Bulls right now being all over the place. So Esteban Ocon, missed opportunity with a lot of drivers bowing out. I think he'll be disappointed with that, and as such for me, it's a 2 out of 10 for the Frenchman. In P13 was Valtteri Bottas, qualified P20, got the better of Lance Stroll in qualifying, beat Esteban Ocon in the race, beat his teammate. It's an 8 out of 10 for me. Look, a fantastic effort from Valtteri Bottas. Was up and around Fernando Alonso as well before he retired. It's been a really, really good weekend for Valtteri in general. Has done the best he possibly can with this absolute tractor of a car. Looked racy, has gone racing with drivers as well. I think for them this year, it's all about getting data. But if you can finish as high as P13, that is really, really solid. And maybe now looking at it where a lot of races, drivers aren't starting. There's going to be a lot of DNFs and you're going to get crashes as the season goes on. Maybe some changeable conditions with the weather. He's putting himself in the best opportunity to try and pick up some points for this Cadillac side. So fantastic race for him. Went racing at times, got his elbows out. In the sprint race, obviously it was non-classified with a DNF there, but the best he possibly could today. On Sunday. And I think 8 out of 10 is well and truly deserved with the drivers he beat and where he finished up in that race for the Cadillac team. P12 was Arvid Lindblad, qualified P15. I'm going to give him a 4 out of 10. Also DNF'd in the sprint race as well. Welcome back to reality, or welcome to F1 type moment after the highs of Albert Park. This was a real reality check, and not in a bad way. You're going to get this as a rookie, but just seemed to be off the pace. Lacked actually running time on Friday, and it showed in sprint qualifying and the qualifying proper and the sprint race on Saturday. Never really was in charge of this weekend. Some contact at times. Just overall scrappy weekend, proper rookie weekend for him. Not going to hold it much against him. Yeah, I've gone and been harsh and given him a 4 out of 10 just because there's so many great performances this weekend. And look, with a lot of people bowing out and safety car, maybe you could have propelled himself up the grid. Made a really bright start to the race and then got caught up with some traffic and unfortunate circumstance in the pit stop stage as well. But I think it was an opportunity to pick up some points, and he just couldn't do that. Never really looked likely in terms of overtaking cars as well, which is a shame because he was really racy at Albert Park. But 4 out of 10's, I just think a reality check for Arvid Lindblad. He'll be back at it. He's a really, really good driver, but just not his weekend around China. In P11 was the sole Audi driver of Nico Hulkenberg, qualified P11 as well. I've got to give him a 5 out of 10. He had a really, really just unfortunate weekend. Car problems in the sprint race meant he DNF'd there as well. May have been harsh giving him below average. Probably he deserves an average mark, but missing out on points by just that small amount. Yeah, like I just think the Audi car has some pace. It has the ability to be in the points if things go their way. And look, Colapinto put together a really, really solid race, and Carlos Sainz was rapid off the line. But I just think Nico Hulkenberg will be kicking himself. He couldn't get into the points after not even featuring around Albert Park, getting in the full race distance. That we know the Audi car has a lot of pace, and over one lap can be very dangerous as well. But I just think just below average, and he couldn't pick up any points in this one here. A solid enough race for him. Sort of ran his own race. Was in the middle of nowhere at times. A few battles here and there, but really ran a solo race and just couldn't quite get up into the points here in Shanghai. So 5 out of 10 for me. Disappointment he couldn't get into that top 10 for Nico Hulkenberg. Finishing in P10 was Franco Colapinto, qualified P12. His first point finish since he was a Williams driver, so a massive achievement for Franco. I've gone and given him an 8 out of 10. I thought his defense and his work in the early moments as well were fantastic. Obviously, he was one of those that didn't pit under the safety car, ran a little bit longer. His defense and after the safety car on George Russell, I thought was superb. Some great four-way battling with the other Haas drivers and his teammate in the early stages of the race as well. And look, when he got hit off by Esteban Ocon, I thought that was a race done for Franco Colapinto, but worked his way back, got his head back down. I thought throughout the race, he carried himself very well, very mature race, kept out of trouble. That wasn't, Ocon colliding with him. And where Franco Colapinto in the past has allowed mistakes or errors, into corners or around other drivers, hurt his race, he kept it relatively clean. He had really good pace, I thought, kept up with Pierre Gasly when he was in and around him. And if it wasn't for that really bad contact with Esteban Ocon, could have been talking about potentially a P8 or a P9. So a really, really solid weekend. I think he was really close in qualifying. I think it was the Q1X or Q2 exit where it was like a couple thousandths away from getting to the next phase. So he had an overall stonking weekend. The pressure was on him and he delivered. So that's a really, really solid improvement, Franco Colapinto. This will be the building block for Alpine, double points and him in the points to try and continue this season on and get some really, really solid results. But I was really impressed throughout the whole weekend for the Argentine. So 8 out of 10 for him. And P9, it was Carlos Sainz, qualified P17 up to P11 off the start. A fantastic start. Things then went his way, pitted under the safety car and held position quite well with obviously Max Verstappen retiring, giving him a 9 out of 10. It really was a smooth operation around Shanghai with his teammate out. All focus was on Carlos Sainz to make the most of a fantastic start and things going his way. And for Carlos, he just kept his nose out of any danger, kept it on the in between the white lines and raced a really, really solid race. He did the overtake in the early stages and then held position. I think that's really fantastic for a car that really sucks. I think the Williams car is so underwhelming. You can tell it is awful around the corners, not too rapid on the straights either. There's a lot of work for that car to do, but to get some points early on in the season when the car is at its probably worst it's going to be is fantastic. And once again shows that Carlos Sainz is one of the best drivers on the grid. He just needs a good package there to support him. We saw it at times last season for Williams where they gave him a decent package. He got some big points, and this is another prime example why Carlos Sainz is a great race driver. He stays out of trouble. He gets some good overtakes done and makes the right reads at the right times. And this was an overall well-conducted race from Williams, pitting at the right moment, getting him in and out of that pit lane, and another fantastic start for Carlos Sainz off the line. So really solid weekend for him. 9 out of 10, near perfect for the Spanish driver. Up next is Isaac Hadjar, finished in P8, qualified in P9. A really solid 7 out of 10 for me. Had that spin on lap 1, worked his way back through the field after pitting on lap 1 as well. Didn't quite go, he's had to pit twice, but look, overall really, really solid pace throughout the race. Showed his quality with some overtakes as well. Look, P8 is probably around the highest or the ceiling he could have got, maybe P7 in there as well, but I think he ran a really, really solid race. Again, that Red Bull car, you're just hoping that doesn't fail on you. It obviously happened to him around Albert Park, happened to Verstappen here, but he was lucky this time around. In the sprint race, he finished in P15. It had some problems with some contact there, so didn't have the cleanest weekend, but did the best thing he possibly could with that really, really average package underneath him. 7 out of 10, just a really solid weekend for Isaac Hadjar. In P7, picking up some massive points was Liam Lawson, qualified P14, also finished P7 in the sprint race. I've gone and given him an 8 out of 10. What a bounce back weekend for him after struggling in Albert Park and all the talk being about his teammate. This was the best response possible. Always was a part of that Bam and Gasly and sort of, I guess you can say, Hadjar pack that was outside of the big boys, outside of the top 6. Ran a really, really good race, worked his way through the field quite well, I thought. Got a decent start, overtook where he needed to, and again, showed that RB car has some really, really solid pace. And this week it was him that showed that it is a racy car that can get past cars and hold position well. Sort of close enough to Gazzy, but never really threatening him. And Isaac Hadjar could never really get the better of Liam Lawson because he didn't make many mistakes. He ran a very solid race, an overall solid weekend for him. Showed the pace of the RB, showed his pace over the race distance, and a really, really quality weekend for New Zealanders. So 8 out of 10 for me for Liam Lawson. And P6 was Pierre Gasly. He qualified P7. I'm giving him a 9 out of 10. It was a superb weekend for the Frenchman. Fell down to P11 in the sprint race, but overall, every single session this weekend, he was threatening that big boy pack. Him and Ollie Bam were the best of the rest throughout the whole weekend, and I think we found a package and a team that suits Pierre Gasly. He was always overperforming that Alpine car when it struggled, and now that they've got a racy package with that Mercedes engine in the back of it, we're going to see Pierre Gasly right up there throughout the whole season. He's got race pace. He knows how to battle drivers. He does get his elbows out, but he doesn't often come out second best in those battles. He doesn't often get caught up or get damaged. And I think what we saw at times, Ocon challenging him, Behrman challenging him, his teammate challenging him, and Verstappen in that sort of big 5-car battle around lap 20 or so. But he held his own. He defended really, really well, I thought. And his deployment around the track, I think, was what separated himself from the likes of Ocon, from the likes of Colapinto. And I think also at times that kept him around the distance of Behrman and Gasly. I think Behrman and Verstappen. I think Pierre Gasly's on for a fantastic season. We might see him Fernando Alonso-esque a few years ago where, yes, Verstappen and Leclerc were clear, but he was sort of picking up the odd podium. For Gasly, it'll be like the best of the rest. He'll be picking up sort of the P6s and the P7s throughout the season, being that best of the rest, and maybe even at times getting ahead of the McLarens. He's got really good race pace. He puts himself in a good position with really solid qualifying. He'll be a constant in Q3 this season unless something drastic changes. I just love the way he carries himself over the race distance, knows how to defend, knows how to attack, and another really solid weekend. So 9 out of 10 for the Frenchman Pierre Gasly. In P5, he was the best of the rest, was Ollie Behrman. Just ran his own race, qualified P10. I've given him a 10 out of 10 for getting into P5. A really solid weekend. Again, got into Q3, was really, really solid in the sprint race, got a point there in P8. This guy looks the package. He's a calm, cool, collected driver. Was awesome in Australia as well. Again, talking about running your own race. Look, got the pit stop done, was on those hard tyres and never really challenged the big boys, but never was really challenged from behind. Max Verstappen got to within 2 seconds, but could never get any quicker lap time to get the better or put Behrman under pressure. He consistently held that time, held those tyres on for dear life. Drove a very, very mature race, a consistent race. That Haas car has pace, but you have to, show it. And Ollie Behrman is showing it whilst his teammate is not. And he's making his teammate look second rate, which maybe is Esteban Ocon, but Esteban Ocon is a very, very solid driver and is a decent driver. But Behrman's making him look like an F2, F3 driver because of how much performance he's getting out of this Haas car. There's pace there, but he's getting the most out of it and even more. A great weekend for him, a perfect weekend, 10 out of 10 for me. Great driving for the English driver. Charles Leclerc qualified P4, finished P4. I've given him an 8 out of 10. Look, he gave us some fantastic side-by-side racing with Lewis Hamilton. Got a great start up into P2 off the line. The Ferrari continues to jump off the line like an absolute rocket ship. Look, 8 out of 10 because he gave us great battling, but 8 out of 10 and not 9 or 10 because he locked up into 14, which gave Lewis Hamilton the P3. Was almost second best to Hamilton throughout the whole weekend, but so can sort of expect this because Lewis Hamilton is great around China. I thought he raced really well, held his tyres well enough. I think it fell away come the end of the race. He saw 2 lockups towards the back end of the race there, but a really, really solid race. The best he possibly could with, Hamilton's pace around here and the Mercedes just being an absolute rocket ship. So really, really good race for Charles Leclerc. Good weekend for Charles Leclerc. P4 in the main race and P2 in the sprint. So really maximised what he could do on the weekend. So 8 out of 10 for me. Really, really solid for the Monegasque driver. In P3, his first podium for Ferrari was Lewis Hamilton, qualified P3, got a P3 in the sprint as well. I'm going to give him a 9 out of 10. Basically near perfect. Again, did as much as he could, gave us some great racing and some fair and neat and tidy racing with Leclerc, with Russell. Took it to the Mercedes as best he could. Got his elbows out. Again, it looks rejuvenated. Looks like he's ready to race and take the race to the opposition drivers. He looks inspired. His qualifying pace is back as well. I think that's a big thing we have to note. He's looking quick in qualifying again, which just wasn't there last year in the Ferrari. He looks comfortable, looks settled in this side now. And it was a near perfect weekend. Look, if he got into P2, I probably would have whacked him 10 out of 10. Or if he beat Charles Leclerc in the sprint race, maybe I would give him 10 out of 10. But look, seeing him up there with Bono and Kimi and George, it was a special moment. Got a great overall weekend. We know he's good around China. It's about carrying this momentum now into Suzuka, into Miami, into Canada, and then into the European swing. But from the promising early signs we've seen, Lewis Hamilton is well and truly back, and we're going to get him competing at the front, competing with Charles, and hopefully competing up there for the Drivers' Championship if Ferrari can bring some more upgrades. But what a weekend for Lewis. 9 out of 10 for me. Really, really solid for the 7-time world champion. George Russell, he qualified in P2, finished in P2, obviously won the sprint race and got sprint pole. I have gone to give him a 7 out of 10. Look, if you're going to be the second Mercedes driver, I'm going to be harsh on you. 6 is average. He's gone above average because things didn't go his way in qualifying in Q3 there with that energy recharge problem and stuck in gear 1. I thought he was solid over the race, struggled to get past the Ferraris. Is that the Ferrari pace or is that him just struggling to get past that Ferrari car? I hold that against him because he couldn't really then get at Kimi and put him under pressure. And look, Kimi didn't give him many opportunities to do that because he raced a very perfect race. But George Russell, if you're the second, in the fastest car and you're the second of the 2 cars, you cannot really get above an 8 out of 10, to be honest, for me, because of how quick and, how far down the road that Mercedes car is. So it's going to be harsh this season rating that second Ferrari car in terms of the race. But 7 out of 10 is a really solid rating, above average, had a really solid start to the weekend, fell away in the qualifying, did the best he could, I thought, in the race after struggling to overtake the Ferrari car. And that's why, for me, his struggle to overtake them is why I've bumped him down to a 7 out of 10. But solid overall race for Russell, but it's not getting the better of his teammate. And then Kimi Antonelli was the race winner, the maiden race win for the Italian. Qualified P1, finished P1, 10 out of 10. Perfect day for Kimi Antonelli. Look, the management of that race was perfect. Never really fell into the clutches of George Russell or Lewis Hamilton or Charles Leclerc. They were all battling. He went up the road and he said goodbye. He never really saw any other car go near him. Had that mini moment with that lock-up, 3 laps to go. Had a little skirmish on the exit of 15 on the final lap. But boy, he was fantastic over the race. And as I keep saying for a few of these drivers, Bam and Antonelli, they showed so much maturity over that race there to stay in control, to keep the lap times coming in, to prevent the graining and the degradation of that front left. We call it a front left limited circuit because of how much pressure goes through that tyre. But he managed the tyre as well, made the most of Russell's misfortunes in qualifying, and almost completed that Grand Slam in terms of had the fastest lap, qualified P1, finished P1, just missed leading after the first lap. But overall, the way he dealt with getting past the Ferraris in the early moments was fantastic. The way he dealt with Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc being up his chuff, the way he built that gap and owned that gap and ran his own race, just fantastic. The management of that race was superb. We saw what George Russell did last week. He did it this week, and it showed us that he can compete for the World Drivers' Championship, and he's got the consistency to go and give us a consistent race distance. So fantastic for Kimi Antonelli, deserving of the win and deserving of a 10 out of 10 rating. And that then brings my ratings to an end for the Shanghai Chinese Grand Prix in race 2. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, guys. Love doing these driver rating videos. And I'll see you guys in other driver ratings in 2 weeks' time after the Japanese Grand Prix.